Hello and welcome back to the When You're podcast, the podcast for when you're doing anything. Today we're talking about when you're predicting the Super Bowl. That's right, the Super Bowl is coming up this Sunday, and I have some predictions. I have some thoughts and ideas about the Super Bowl, and I thought this would be a good time to get it all out before it all goes down. So the first things first. I really love football. I really enjoy watching it. I know it's wrong. I know you're not supposed to like it. I know it's like a bunch of guys giving each other concussions, but there's something so cool and exciting about it. It's kind of like, this is my land, and you're not going to take another step forward, and then the other guys are just like, we're moving forward and we're going to make it to the other side and we're going to win and we're going to conquer you, and it's something cool about that, something I like about it. It's also very exciting, I think, and it's one of the sports that I kind of understood right away very quickly. I mean, I feel that way with a lot of sports like baseball and soccer. Like, it's just you kick the ball, you hit the ball, you run, you catch, you do this, right? But football was like the first technical, like I understood like a lot of the background rules to it. I didn't understand soccer and like all the technical stuff about baseball until like later on down the road, but football was pretty easy to get. I was like, oh, so that's a first down, and that's, I was like, maybe I was like 10 years old when I learned that, and I was like, 11, 12 when I learned the other stuff. It was all at the same time, kind of. All of this is to really say, is football a good sport? Well, I certainly enjoy it. I don't think it's realistically the best sport or the safest sport, but I definitely think it's one of the most entertaining, and they suckered me in. They got me in with this high level of danger and collision and attack and force behind it. I don't know what it is about that sport in particular that I really enjoy, but I think it's such a fun thing to play. I remember, throwing the football around with friends, and it was just so much fun. And running and chasing and, playing flag football is really fun as well. So I truly enjoy football, playing it, and I also I never played contact. I only played flag football. And flag football was the most fun because it was always like, you can't get my flag, and it was always who could run the fastest. It wasn't about dodging. It wasn't about like, how can you get away? Because as soon as they get towards your hip, they got the flag. You're done for. But if you can run super quickly and you can move past everybody, you got it. You also needed to catch the ball. But overall, I don't know if football would be considered my. You know what? Yeah. I think football would be like my top most watched sport. I like soccer and I like basketball, but I rarely, if ever, like turn on the TV and I'm like, yep, let's sit down and watch this, like fully all the time. Not that I wouldn't want to. It's just like, I feel like after the fact, or unless it's like a big game, of course, like the World Cup with soccer, that was cool. Or like the Final Four for basketball, I feel like are the moments I really watch for. But for football, I kind of watch all season long to see if like what team is going on or who played against who, and I look at the highlights a lot more. But I also look at the basketball highlights. Anyways, football to me is just like, I grew up watching it, I enjoy watching it, and I've never had a reason to like, what I'm trying to say is I've never hated it. I've never been like, oh, this sport sucks, even though that's kind of the conversation about it right now, is that it's very dangerous. You can't keep it up. They don't pay their, they do a lot of bad stuff to their players, and the teams are all going through stuff, and they're saying it's rigged now. It's all rigged. So you don't know what's going on. But football is definitely one of my go-to, one of my favorite sports. And I'm excited to see what happens with the Super Bowl, because listen, there's so much built up around this season. So many people are so dedicated to the sport. Now, I'm not one of those those people who are like super, super dedicated. Do I like it? Yes. Am I like ride or die for it? Or like, I go super, super hard for it? Probably not. Not that big of a deal to me. But people like plan events and stuff. People throw Super Bowl parties. Can you believe that? People throw a whole party. Like they do a whole get together and they're like, hey man, come over. We'll watch the game. We'll have some food. We'll do a barbecue. Everybody will, it's like a big event now. It's such a big deal. And I think it's because so many people, over the years, it's become such a big highlight of television, and it's what everybody's kind of grew up watching or have been involved in. And the Super Bowl party, I mean, I would imagine that those Super Bowl parties are always like, I imagine like every Super Bowl party or like those kinds of events, there's a 50-50 line. You know what I'm saying? Like half of the people have to be rooting for this team and half of the other people who attend have to be rooting for the other team. Because if it's just a Super Bowl party where all of them just go for one team, and what if they lose? Right? Then the whole party will die down and it'll be like, oh, what if they lose like right off the bat? Like the other team gets 3 points ahead. Unless, of course, they make a comeback. You never know with football, right? Because sometimes there have been plenty of moments where it feels like they can't win. They're so far behind. The other team has scored so much. But then in the second half, they come back and they win the whole thing. It's crazy. But the party is just kind of like, I feel like the party isn't really so much dedicated to the football as it is to just having people around and having an excuse to bring people together. Like during the 2020 thing, they had like people in cardboard cutouts in the stadiums. Like, can you believe that? That is so crazy and funny at the same time, and watching from home. I don't know if, and we obviously couldn't have a bunch of people near us, so there was no Super Bowl party, there was no big thing or event. But now I think after the pandemic, or, even though we're still kind of going through it, it's more about like trying to get back to some sort of normalcy. So I guess this is just another way to like, okay, let's have another Super Bowl party event. Let's have another big deal. Let's have another thing. And after the last Super Bowl, I mean, I definitely think the last Super Bowl was so cool. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought down to the it being in LA, from it having like a bunch of the stars go over there. There was so much going for it from the Super Bowl halftime show. There was a lot to celebrate about that particular Super Bowl. It just felt cool. It felt very, very like we were getting back into it, like back into the world again. Whereas this year it kind of feels a little bit off, if that makes sense. This Super Bowl doesn't feel 100% like perfect, but it's football and they've definitely made it this far. I mean, both teams are at the top of the are at the very top. I think the Eagles and the Chiefs have like a 14-3 record, something like that. Both of them, they both have like equal amount of wins and losses throughout the season. So they're equal, and they're also very high up on the rankings compared to the other teams. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And the Super Bowl parties, the food and everything, that's why it's such like a big deal to have like Doritos commercials, right? It's such a big deal to have all of these things happen, so that way we can just buy for the day of. Or they'll have sponsorships from pizza places. Like before it used to be Pizza Hut, now I think it's Little Caesars, right? If I remember correctly, they out-pizza'd the Hut. That was crazy. That was nuts. And that's another thing. It's the Super Bowl money. There's so much money on that day. Like, can you imagine the amount of money that's floating around on that day? Not just the players, not just the coaches, but people betting on the event. People bet on who wins the Super Bowl, or who gets the first touchdown, who does this, who does that, right? There's so many levels to it, so many tiers of what's going to happen, right? And then on top of that, you have people making bets about the bets, and then you have people in the stadium who spent money on the tickets to go to the Super Bowl, and then the tickets it takes to fly to the Super Bowl, the tickets, I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right? And also the commercials, the Super Bowl halftime show, the pre Super Bowl party or event or whatnot, right? They have those, right? The parties after the Super Bowl. I mean, there's just so much money surrounding that day. There's so much riding on that whole event that it really feels like there's no way for them to not make money on this day. It's such a huge event. It's such a huge part of, American, I guess, culture now, that if you're not participating in it, sort of, it feels like maybe you're missing out a little bit. I don't know what I'm saying. All I'm trying to say is that on Super Bowl day, there's a lot of money floating around. There's a lot of money going out there that day. And it's very, I mean, I can't think of another, I guess, basketball. I can't really see, I mean, of course there's sports betting, but for the Super Bowl, it's the biggest game of the year, It really is like one of the biggest games of the whole year. And if you're not betting on that sport that day, you could potentially be missing out on a lot of money. I'm not a gambler, so I don't really care. I just think it's fun to like choose what team you want to go for, just for like the fun of it, just to like have something to root for, or something to be like, something to cheer for, to watch for. You pick a team, and if they win, they win. But if they lose, then you're just like, well, they suck anyways, or whatever. If they're not the like your go-to team or your hometown team or whatever. And I have no idea if there's like, because obviously the football players, they get paid a wage, they get paid a salary or whatever. I don't know how much they get paid. But when they get paid, right? When they get paid, do they get extra for going to the Super Bowl? Or maybe this is just me not understanding how it works. But or maybe it's just like however many games they play, that's how much they get paid. So if you're looking at a regular season, even if you're the worst team, you still get paid a lot of money. But if you continue to go on further and further and further, then you can also make more money. I don't know. I think that's the goal, right? To, on top of getting a ring and the trophy and being the best that year, that season or whatever, it's also on top of that, you're also getting paid a big advance, or like a bigger check. That's also another incentive to win, I suppose, even though you're already getting paid a lot. And what was I? How many times do you go to a Super Bowl and you? I'm trying to think of like somebody who has been to the Super Bowl but hasn't really, in the long run, really been paid off for it. And I can only think of Tom Brady, but that's because he's been to the Super Bowl so many times with the New England Patriots and then the Buccaneers afterwards. And for me, I just feel like that guy obviously gets paid a lot of money, but he also loses some of them. So does that Where does that go? If you lose the Super Bowl, does it really matter? You made it to the Super Bowl, you get paid a hefty. I guess it's more about like winning, being on top at the end of the season. I guess that's what it's really all about. But it's also really about the money, right? Like I can't help but keep thinking about the money on this day. There's so much money on that day. Like I remember I watched the Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie called The Game Plan. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Spoiler alert if you've seen it, but the whole film kind of focuses on Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who's this football player, the character, who's a football player, and in the movie, they're like contractually obligated to be like, if they win like the big game or the big Super Bowl at the end of the movie, he has to be like, I'm going to this place, or I think it was like Patty's hamburger spot or whatever. He's supposed to say that at the end to the camera. They put a camera on him close up to his face and they go like, where are you going after this? And he's like, I'm going to Patty's burger spot. But instead he doesn't say that because he loves his daughter now, and it's like a whole emotional moment where it's like, I don't care about the sponsorships. I don't care about the money. I have my daughter and that's all I care about. But then when I see it in TV, in real life, like they'll point the camera at a football player and he'll just scream out, I'm going to Disney World. And they'll be like, yeah, you can get a Disney World resort free for 2 nights only. And da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, oh, snap. He's getting paid a check for that. Like he's getting paid a lot of money for saying that. I wonder how much. I always wonder how much they get paid for those sponsorships, for that short little ad to be like, you too can go to Disney World. You know what I'm saying? Which I guess, I mean, when they were doing it in Miami, I guess it was like the Super Bowl in Miami or whatever. I guess it wasn't that big of a deal to say it. Like, where are you going after this? I'm going to Disney World. It's like, yeah, it's like right there. It's in Orlando. You can literally walk over there if you wanted to. Whereas if you're going to do it in somewhere like New York City, when you say it, then it's more of like, oh snap, he's going to Disney World after this. That's, or maybe it's the other way around. You know what? I don't know. All that I'm trying to say is that these players, when they make it to the end, when they make it to the Super Bowl, when they make it to the big game, I think so many doors open for them to get those opportunities, to get the big bucks, to get these sponsorships, to show off a little bit more of the personality and become more of a, I don't know, a household name. I really, the only household name I can think of is Tom Brady, and that's about it. And that's just because he's such a great football player. But looking back on it, it's kind of difficult for me to name like a whole team or teams, you know, to name their entire lineup is crazy. But at the end of the day, getting paid for saying I'm going to Disney World is not the end. Isn't wrong. Like, it was wrong in the movie The Game Plan because the guy didn't care about anything but making money. But if these guys are just doing their thing and they just so happen to scream, I'm going to Disney World, and then they do indeed go to Disney World, then it's not such a bad thing. And they have like all of their family around them, their kids and whatnot, then it's actually like a very joyous moment. It's very happy. So all of that to say, I'm going to be looking out for anybody who says I'm going to Disney World, because I just have to know. I mean, I just have to like look in the back of my mind and be like, how much is he getting paid for that? 2 million, 1 million, 500K, 250K. How much does he get paid? He's on the biggest, the biggest night of mainstream television, and he's screaming out he's going to Disney World. Who does that inspire? Like, who has seen a football player say, or any athlete say, I'm going to Disney World, and be like, you know what? I'm going to Disney World too. That just cemented my, I guess if you're a big football fan and your team wins and then they go like, I'm going to Disney World, and they're like, you know what? I love my team so much. If he's going to Disney World, so am I. I'm taking the whole family. Something like that, right? I think that's the idea. Although I never saw Tom Brady do that. Never saw the guy do that. But he is retired now, so I think he's going to go, maybe he'll go the Peyton Manning route, where it's like you retire, but you're still on top, and you're still kind of involved with the NFL. But Tom Brady never felt like, I mean, he obviously loved football, but I don't know if he was ever like he's kind of the face of it, but he's also kind of like, he's kind of not the big personality. I guess I'm kind of thinking of him to be. While I feel like Peyton Manning and his brother Eli Manning, they're more of like, they like football, and they can also be personalities. They can also, what's the right word? They can also be attached to it without playing the sport, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like Tom Brady hasn't had that shining personality, so to speak, where it's like he can be up there and make jokes or talk about football or, do commentary about it. Whereas it's more of like, he's a good player, and that's what I know and love him for, you know what I'm saying? It's not so much about what he's saying or talking about the sport, as opposed to somebody like Peyton Manning, who can do the best of both worlds, right? He can be a good personality and talk and give commentary about football, while at the same time be a great quarterback and football player and do all of those things. And it also puts a weird dynamic to football, because for so long Tom Brady was the leader. He was the guy to beat. Now that he's gone, it's, and beaten. That's another thing is that he didn't end on top, right? He didn't end when he won the Super Bowl. He ended after losing, 2 times in a row? It just kind of felt a little bittersweet, but nobody can take away his accomplishments and his great athleticism over these past years. He's one of the greatest. He's the greatest quarterback in the NFL, and he has risen from the ashes. I don't think there's anybody who could take a situation like he did against I think it was the Atlanta Falcons, and they were down 28-0. They needed 4 touchdowns just to tie with Atlanta. And what do you know? They pull through at the end. They pull through at the very, very end, and they score touchdown after touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, and they make it, and they win it, and people can't believe it. It is really, I mean, I remember that game, and it was just like so bizarre how they can make a comeback in such a short amount of time. But it is possible. So anything is out there. Anything can happen on that day. So in this upcoming, I mean, there's so much more to this Super Bowl than just obviously the game or the players involved. It's in order to keep the people engaged who maybe aren't big on sports or big not big fans of the Super Bowl, how can you keep people interested? How can you keep people in tune for a long, lengthy game while also selling your advertisers' products? And that's where the commercials come in. A big part of the Super Bowl for when I was like growing up, it wasn't so much about, for a lot of people, especially kids, when I was growing up, it wasn't so much about watching the game. It was more about, what is the commercial going to be? What's going to be the funny little commercial that they do? What song? What's going to happen during the commercial and whatnot, right? And that's when I knew for a fact that the commercials had to be good to keep the people's engagement. And I was like, oh snap, they need these commercials to be good, and people will pay, companies will pay huge amounts of money to get that Super Bowl spot because people's eyes and ears will be glued to the TV at that moment. And that's when it all started to make sense to me at like 12 years old, or I think I was like 11 or 10 actually. And it all started to click into my brain. It was like, wow, they spend all this money so that the people can go out there and they can also spend their money on the product. And it all just started to click. It was like, that's why they do it. And that's why the commercials are always so good. Whereas on a regular day, on a regular show or whatever, the commercials are always terrible and generic, and there's no fun, there's no joy in it. But on that one, they add a little sauce on it. They just throw a little pizzazz on it, just to keep the people interested all throughout the Super Bowl. So maybe you don't care about the game. Maybe you don't want to see them clash their heads and get concussions and break ankles or mess up their arm and shoulders and elbows and whatnot. But you are there to watch the Clorox commercial, or to watch this movie trailer, or to watch this or that. You know what I'm saying? You're definitely there for a lot more. And there's so much more to offer. I can't think... I mean, there's a lot of commercials that I like. A lot of them are, the skippable ones that I can pass on YouTube. Those are my favorite commercials. My favorite commercials are the ones that I can skip after 5 seconds because I can just go straight into what I want to watch. I don't like having to watch any. That's why I pay for a streaming service. But at the same time, I do appreciate a good commercial. Like, I think the last good commercial I saw was the one with Larry David, where he was doing the he was kind of talking, what was it? I think it was the crypto one, or the Bitcoin or whatever, or Ethereum. I don't remember what it was, but he was talking and he was like saying no to all of these great things. Like, he was like, I hate the idea of a toilet because we're regular people. We just go outside to use the restroom. Or he spits out coffee, or he hates the Walkman, and all kinds of stuff. So it's basically him being like against all of it. I thought it was very... I love Larry David. He's fantastic. So I thought he's very hilarious to me. So I like the commercial just to see him being comical and funny. And then I guess the other one would be probably... trying to think. Oh, the Budweiser horse ones, or like the dog, where they get you with like the animal. The animal ones are always the ones that they get to me because they tell such a beautiful, heartwarming story, and then at the end of it all, they're just like, drink beer, or have a shot of alcohol or something. You know what I'm saying? I always found that so amusing, and also so heartwarming and like uplifting at the same time. It's very, very nice. Now, once you're, the commercials are great, and so is the game, but there's another huge draw for the Super Bowl. And this, and again, this is another major money thing. People bet on what maybe the set list of what the artist is going to sing for the Super Bowl halftime show. There is so much money in the Super Bowl halftime show. It is unbelievable. But none other than Rihanna is performing this year at Super Bowl 57. And I have to say, I am really looking forward to seeing what she does. Because it's been such a long time, and it's also kind of such a mystery of what is she going to do? Where's her head at? What is she planning on? And it seems like a very big moment for everybody who's like been a fan of hers and has been wanting her to put out more music and has been wanting to hear from her and do more. And now is such a perfect time to see what she's going to do. And I'm a big fan of her music, and I'm just excited to see what she's going to do. But this is also, an Apple Music event? I don't know how much they work together, because usually I think it would be like Pepsi. The Pepsi halftime show presents, Lady Gaga or Katy Perry or whoever, right? And then the Pepsi would also sponsor the whole NFL, right? So it's they do the halftime show and they do the whole Super Bowl. They sponsor the whole thing. That way it pays for it all. But I don't think Apple Music is just doing Rihanna, or if they're also a sponsor of the whole NFL. I think it's just Rihanna. So with that in mind, it's just a whole different company putting a whole bunch of money into that performance. So I don't know what their give back is. I don't know if it's going to be like an Apple Live exclusive. You know what I'm saying? No, that can't be it. Maybe they'll do like a recording of it, and if you want to rewatch the recording, but it's going to be on live TV. Like, you can look, all I'm trying to say is that the Apple Music is sponsoring the halftime show, so they're going to put a lot of money into the performance, as opposed to Pepsi that puts a bunch of money into everything, and then the Super Bowl halftime show also gets like a piece of the money. So you don't know how much they really get out of the whole pie. Like, if the whole pie, right, let's say 7/8 of it go to the Super Bowl and for tickets and for the whole, basically paying for sponsoring the whole event, paying for everything that night, while also on top of it paying for the Super Bowl halftime show. Let's say that's a quarter of the pie. A quarter of the pie goes to the Super Bowl halftime show, and the other 3/4 are for the whole event in general. Then that means that if Apple is only sponsoring Rihanna, that means that they're just giving her a whole pie all on her own. And then the Super Bowl obviously has other sponsors that support it and whatnot. So it's going to be very interesting to see. It's just going to be so much fun to see the performance, to listen to the music. Rihanna's an incredible singer and has such amazing, an incredible catalog of music that the only way it could go wrong, if it's just kind of, I don't know, somber, I guess. If she doesn't come out with the big hits in the right way, maybe it could miss. but I doubt it. I think she understands what she's gonna do, and she knows what kind of a show she's gonna put on, and I'm excited to see it. Okay. At the end of the day, this is just a big glorified football game. Two teams face to face going at it for the final time of the season, I guess. Or I mean, I guess there's more games afterwards, right? Am I wrong about that? Oh, anyways, all I know is this is the big game. This is the one for all the marbles. And this time, it's the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And I have to say, I don't know who to root for. Because neither one of them are like my go-to teams, I guess. But maybe, just maybe, I'll lean more over to one side than the other on the day of. So, when you're predicting the Super Bowl, predicting the Super Bowl winners? I don't know. What did I say? When you're predicting the Super Bowl, what's going to happen at the Super Bowl? For me, I'm going to say, maybe I shouldn't say. You know what? Just flip a coin. You know, when you're predicting who's going to win the Super Bowl, just flip a coin. Just really don't put much thought into it. That's how they do it. They flip a coin and they just go like heads or tails, and they go heads, and it lands, and they decide right then and there. Just flip a coin. It really isn't that big of a deal. But if it is a big deal to you, if it's one of your teams, I say root for them till the end. Give them your support and see how it goes. Me, on the other hand, I prefer to stay impartial. Wish both teams the best of luck. If they're your team, you know, hey, good luck. You're gonna kill it, you know. If it's not your team, then hey, there's always next season, and you're gonna come back stronger than ever. You know, you'll make it next time. You'll see. But I do know something interesting about the Chiefs and the Eagles is that there's like a pair of brothers that are going up against each other. And I guess there's like, I think their mom is going towards the Kansas City Chiefs. And I was like, that's such a stab in the back. Like, if I was that mom, I would definitely like make a jersey with half and half just to be impartial, just to be like, I love both of my sons. But no, she's very clearly going for one son over the other. And it's really funny. And then the other brother is kind of like, yeah, well, I have my wife and my kids who's supporting me and whatnot. And the other guy kind of doesn't, I don't know if the other guy has a family or not, or like a wife and kids and stuff. But I know one brother does, I think. But what I know is that it's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be a very technical game because when I watched the Chiefs play against the Bengals, the Chiefs only won because of a last minute mistake from the Bengals where the guy like fouled whoever caught the football or was running with the football. He pushed him after he was already out of bounds, and then the refs called it a foul, and that gave the Chiefs the opportunity to field goal kick, and then they won the whole thing. Whereas the Eagles, when they played against the 49ers, it was a very clear victory for the Eagles. So it's kind of it's going to be very interesting to see how they play that day with all the rules and especially being cautious of, you know, fouls and if how many flags are going to be thrown during the game. You have to be very technical. You have to be very specific on what the teams have to do or what has to happen. And that only happens if they start getting emotional and they start getting angry and frustrated at each other. Because when you get frustrated, you make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, that's when it starts to become a big, heated battle. Which is really good for and entertaining sometimes. And then other times it's just like, oh, just play already. Stop doing that. If you want to win, you got to play fair and, keep it clean, stuff like that. But anyways, I guess, no, I don't want to, I'm not going to jinx it. I'm not going to lean on one side over the other. All I'm going to say is go either team and, yeah. I'm excited to see the game. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoy the Super Bowl as well. This comes out before all of it. So we'll see what happens. And I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.